Now back to Terrence and Philip.
Hey, Terrence, I think I have...
Mom, doorbell!
Wait, before you do, pull my phone.
Mom, answer the door!
Hey, Philip.
God damn it, lazy ass whore.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is
Jesus Christ.
You have a lovely home.
Hello.
It's an amazing book. Bonjour.
Hola. Ni hao.
Me llamo Elder White.
Are these your kids?
This book gives you the secret to eternal life.
Sound good?
Eternal life
With Jesus
is
Christ.
super fun.
Hello.
Ding dong.
And if you let us in, we'll show you how it can be done. No thanks.
You sure?
Oh well, that's fine.
Goodbye.
Have fun in hell.
Hey now.
You simply won't believe how much this book will change. This book will change your life. Change your life. This book will change your life. Book of Mormon. Mormon.
Hello and welcome to another episode of TouchStones from Dude Is This Thing On. I'm Tyler Daswick, and joining me, as always, is my co-host and our producer, Emilio Cariotti.
How's it going, everybody?
Emilio, this episode, when we were putting this list together of all the different Touchstones, I feel like this was one of the last ones under the wire.
This was what the fuck are we gonna do for this genre? Because
Right.
neither, with the exception of watching Cats the musical way too much when I was a kid, because my family had it on VHS. I have very little exposure to the theater. I saw Avenue Q off Broadway when I lived in New Jersey, and that's about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I had never seen a Broadway show until...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, until starting some research for this. This episode is about the Book of Mormon, everybody.
Yeah, well, the title will betray that.
Yeah, and look, we didn't have to do a Broadway show for this series, right?
We really did.
We really didn't.
No.
But this show just impacted and pervaded so much about popular culture beyond Broadway that I think we had to, right?
Yeah, I think so. I agree that it's important enough, I think, that we should have definitely done. I don't know. I'm not fucking Hammerstein and whatever the fuck.
Yeah. But...
I don't know about musicals. I don't know about the theater. I have zero experience. So I'm going to have some questions later on in this episode where I'm going to be like, I'm probably going to make us both sound like complete fucking idiots, but we're just going to have to roll with it because, we really don't know what the fuck we're talking about here. But at least one of us has actually seen the play because it is a hard one to go and see.
Yeah, well, it's still on Broadway, so you can only see it in New York or if it happens to be touring. And I live a 2-hour bus ride from the city now, and so on a Friday, took the bus in, worked out of my company's New York office, and went and saw the show after work. And
that's awesome.
And hey, yeah, it was really cool. But I think that ultimately we are kind of starting in a very telling place with this episode because, of all the things that we've discussed in this series so far, kind of one of the running themes is how accessible everything has become. You can watch pretty much every show. You can see pretty much whatever movie.
This is true.
All these little niche genres and directors and artists are now super accessible. The one thing that isn't is Broadway. It's still very exclusive and expensive thing. I
think that lends itself. It's because the theater is the original entertainment system, pre-TV, pre-radio, people were going to fucking amphitheaters 2000 BC to watch plays about Heracles and shit, right?
Right.
It's been around for fucking ever. It's I think of it this way, the way that Broadway moved to radio and then TV is the same way that horse and buggy, if you owned a horse in the 1700s, it was fucking expensive. If you were a regular hole ploy,
Right.
you probably didn't have a horse and carriage. You just fucking walked everywhere until your knees gave out and you died.
Yeah.
But then a guy comes along named Henry Ford and he creates the Model T, and therefore cars are just fucking accessible to everybody. Every man and woman has a car at that point, right?
Yeah.
if you so in this is a
Yeah,
long
keep going,
analogy.
keep going, you're doing
In
great.
In 2019, every idiot has a fucking car. They're like super accessible, but not every idiot has a horse. Horses are still something that primarily rich people have, or if you live outside of the city.
Right.
Like if you're in New York City and you have a horse, your ass must be fucking wealthy.
Yes.
There is a clear barrier of entry to horse ownership in something like New York City. That is what the Broadway is to like regular entertainment. I don't know why you're laughing. I think I'm making a good
No,
point.
it's a great
That
point.
is what Broadway
That's why it's
is
so funny.
to regular entertainment. And that if you go to Broadway shows regularly, your ass is wealthy.
You got a horse.
Yeah, you have a fucking horse at that point, which is why you and I don't go to fucking Broadway shows. So just know that going in.
Right. So this was.
I don't know why that was funny. I
No,
thought it was spot
no,
on.
it is. I don't even know where to go from that. But yeah, the point was that
Compose yourself.
point was
Yeah.
it took a lot of effort to go to the
Yeah.
to go to the Book
You
of
gotta
Mormon.
feed the horse. You gotta stable the horse. You gotta pick up the horse's shit. It's hard work to go see Broadway shows. You have to put in work to see this shit. That's the
right.
thing.
You're right.
And somehow the Book of Mormon just farts in the face of all of that. And people like love it. It got 11 fucking Tony Awards. Rich people went there, got farted on, and paid like $3,000 to do
This
it.
horse,
That is the beauty of this show.
this horse had a fucking limp.
Horse should have been shot at
It
entry.
had worms.
Oh,
but all that's to say, like, this show is definitely like an anti-Broadway product. It's like countercultural, and it's like it's crass and like gross, and the jokes are really, really raunchy. The subject matter is really provocative, and it's super not politically correct. It's kind of the opposite of, you know, put an accent on the theater, and
Yeah.
everything that's supposed to mean. But I think that's kind of why it was so popular.
No, I think it was. It was. So if you don't know, Book of Mormon is a play that is written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park and Basketball and
Yeah.
Team America World Police and the South Park movie Bigger, Longer, Uncut. Like he's very crass, but incredibly successful, incredibly smart writers who secretly always wanted to do a Broadway musical since they were in college. If you know anything about these guys, since they were like young, they had wanted to do a Broadway musical. And there's elements of that throughout their TV show, and Bigger, Longer, Uncut
Right.
is a musical movie. And so they finally, once they got enough like clout in the entertainment world, they were able to go, fuck it, now we can do our play. This is that play. So if you watch South Park, it's literally like a 1-to-1 comparison of the writing, humor, like the style and everything like that, practically transposed into real people lighting farts on fire and saying fuck you Osama bin Laden on stage in person.
Yeah, it really does have the feel of watching a live South Park episode. And there are like very, very clear translations and projections from the TV show to the Book of Mormon, even though there's no like explicit relation. That like the
Right.
depiction of the devil is very, very similar. The jokes about Mormonism are of a particular, the same kind of angle. And that is kind of a wild thing to be sitting in the Eugene O'Neill Theater, where it shows in the theater district in New York City, which is like this beautiful space with like one of those like painted ceilings and like the
like Art Deco.
Yeah.
It's got all the architectural styles from the past like 300 years that the thing's probably been there. And like back in the 1800s, they used to show Julius Caesar and all those other
Right.
Shakespeare plays and shit. And now they're showing the Book of Mormon.
and they've been showing it for years, since 2011.
Yeah, like since I was a freshman in college, I think was the year it came out.
Yeah. So it came out in 2011. It's now one of the longest running Broadway shows ever. It's made over $500 million, so it's one of the most financially successful shows ever created. It's launched certain people like from Broadway to various like entertainment careers. No like real superstars, but like Josh Gad was in the original cast, and he's like a fairly recognizable like comic name.
Yeah, he did
Oh,
some.
shit.
He did like
You know who else was in the original cast that I found?
the guy from Girls.
Who is that? The guy from Girls?
I don't know, the gay roommate, and he also plays in Big Mouth. I forget the actor's name.
Ah, shit.
He's white and he's gay, and that's all I can remember about the guy.
Oh,
like, those are his two attributes. Okay, well I cut you off, so fuck me.
No,
Sorry.
really surprising. Brian Tyree Henry, who plays Paperboy on Atlanta.
Oh, that's actually really funny.
Yeah.
Does he play General Butt Naked? Or
Yeah,
whatever?
butt fucking naked. Yeah, he plays that good.
I need to overcome some things, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So some kind of like cool names if you look deep on the roster, but yeah, the show kind of operates on this strange dissonance where, I mean, on its own terms, it's really funny and it's really, really well done. But the whole time you're watching it, you feel like you're just getting away with someone. Like you're in on the joke of these two kind of class clowns coming into the Broadway space and just
Right.
like yucking it up. And it's kind of like it's just a very cool, unique experience. And I mean, and the show's spectacular. Yeah, like it's excellent. Just on its own merit.
11 Tony Awards.
Right.
This is a nice horse, Tyler. It's literally like if a donkey won the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
Like a shitty 12-year-old donkey won the Kentucky Derby. But I have a question for you.
Okay.
And this is going to be one of those questions that's going to be like, yeah, see, we shouldn't have done this episode. Why is this like, what does this... So like Kanye's, like the Kanye episode that we did was My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It revolutionized the way that we think of modern hip hop.
Uh-huh.
Is this that? Like, what is this to theater? Like, tell me, as somebody who's gone to this show, you're the only fucking person I know that's gone. Like, what is this to theater? Like Kanye was to music, or like Spielberg was to movies?
Well, I think it relates to a lot of what we've just talked about. I think I said in the magazine article that it kind of nudges the Broadway door open a little bit so other shows could then kick it down. So the Book of Mormon, like my conception of Broadway before the show was like very classical, very like show tunes, musical, Rent, Hair, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
like
Wicked, Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, like very maybe like a little bit melodramatic, maybe a little bit self-serious, like just like kind of
Cats.
Yeah. It's like kind of like flamboyant theater, and here comes the Book of Mormon that is sort of like making fun of all that seriousness. And yeah, it kind of has a little bit of like an earnest and a sweet message at the end, but it doesn't take itself seriously at all. It, in fact, does the opposite throughout all of it. And it kind of sets this template for innovation and provocation in Broadway. So suddenly theater feels more accessible to all kinds of different voices. And I think the clear product of that is,
I know what you're gonna say.
It is Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
But
here's the thing. For me, that's the only one that comes to mind. Like, you're saying it's kicking down the door. Like, besides Hamilton, what else? It's been 9 years, almost 9 years since the play came out, right? Almost a decade.
Yeah.
Hamilton, and then like what else? That's why I'm like, how do you know that this, like, you only seeing one play and me seeing Avenue Q,
Right?
Like, how the fuck do we know, like, if this is actually that important?
Well,
That's my concern.
I think, I mean, it's a clear, this is like a clear gap in our knowledge and everything.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But the other thing I was kind of thinking about is like theater in general. Maybe Wicked in the 2000s, but then Book of Mormon and Hamilton are the two biggest shows of our lifetime. Easily.
Probably.
And they're probably the two biggest shows of like anyone who's alive right now. I just don't know a bigger show. I don't know a show that like shows that like reached more people, whose soundtracks were more popular, the creators of which were more prolific and well known. And kind of went on to do even more amazing things. I feel like theater in the last 10 years, from like a cultural standpoint, the culture of theater, the culture of drama, kind of, if it didn't enter the mainstream, it kind of intruded upon it in a way that it didn't before. And I think this starts with something like Glee in, I think, was it 2009 when that show came out? Like, that was a fucking phenomenon. And
yeah, it really was.
It really was. And now we had the Book of Mormon a couple years later. We had Hamilton in the back half of this decade. And now like theater is just kind of like this accepted thing. When we were in high school, when anyone was in high school, theater was like this marginal community where like weirdos went. Like, so you're like, really?
Yeah, there were the theater kids, and they just had sex and bitched about each other all the time.
Right.
And that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And, like, growing up, I had the weird cousin who was super into fucking theater. Like, and she was a theater geek, and she was 13 and still watched High School Musical, like, all the time. Like, yeah, it was a marginalized, kind of nerdy thing that not most people were not into. Most people didn't give a shit at all.
Yeah. And it was theater was like, it felt like incestuous. Like they were all having sex with each other, Like,
no, I know. It was like that group just fucked like rabbits. And they never talked to anybody, and they would just complain about each other behind their backs. It was like it was like concentrated drama, for like 30 kids in high school.
Yeah. And those kids, like, they were all in on theater, and that was their life. And theater was like, to use something that's gonna like feel like weirdly buzzwordy in this context, but like theater was a lifestyle, like it was a lifestyle, the theater lifestyle.
It was, it was not one I was into, but yeah.
Right. But the Book of Mormon, I feel like sort of represents this expansion of that, where suddenly like I have an interest in going to see this show. Like, we kind of wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I tried for like 6 months to get tickets.
Yeah.
Like when I was living in New York, it had just come out like 3 weeks before I moved to New Jersey, it had just come out. And for like 6 months, every weekend, I'd take a 30-minute train to Penn Station and walk to Broadway. I mean, I'd go fuck around in the city too.
Yeah.
But I'd walk there at like 8 a.m. because you can get like shotgun seats where like
Right.
some asshole didn't show up and you can nab some seats for like $200 or something like that. And it was a lottery system. You and like 10,000 other fucking New Yorkers, animals, would literally like throw your name into like a baseball cap, and then they would just pull like 2 or 3 names or however many tickets they got. And I tried for like 6 months, like 4 times a month, and I didn't even come close.
Yeah, but like you wanted to because it for some reason.
Yeah, I was fucking stoked.
Yeah, because whether it was the soundtrack coming out and the songs being really funny, or if it was Trey Parker and Matt Stone, or whatever your kind of way into it was, there were more ways in for people like you and me than just, theater kids. And I think that type of expansion is really indicative of all these kind of marginal spaces in pop culture in the last decade. And the Book of Mormon is a really, really good example of one of these marginal spaces feeling bigger, maybe not actually being bigger. Because, let's be honest, like most people listening to this, most people reading about the Book of Mormon, most people listening to the soundtrack haven't seen the show. And the same goes for Hamilton, even more so.
Yeah.
As these shows weirdly become more and more popular, they are more and more exclusive. Like, I mean, to be honest, one of the reasons we're doing this about the Book of Mormon and not Hamilton is because Hamilton was even harder for us to access. Like, there's just no
Yeah,
way
no, there's
either
no
of us could
way.
have seen
The
it.
fucking like vice president couldn't get in, pretty much.
Right.
Like, it is a political play in the middle of a very political time, and it's very high profile in a very high profile city. Like, we can't, there's no possible way but that's my thing. Like, okay, so Book of Mormon has, and we can wrap up here, but Book of Mormon has kicked down the doors, so to speak, of theater. Yet the only other comparable thing that's maybe come off the offspring of the Book of Mormon is Hamilton, and that is even more exclusive to get into than fucking anything else. So like, it kind of retroactively like fucked like future audiences, because like something as popular as Hamilton, I was like, maybe we might get to see it next decade, Tyler. Like, we might be
Fingers
able to
crossed.
see it as like 35-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, well, it did and it didn't, because I think, especially with Hamilton, just as a show, did so much for, like, it is very, very direct and focused in, okay, we want to be progressive in the way we represent, the way we present, and who comes in. Lin-Manuel Miranda, who created that show, spearheaded a lot of active efforts to bring in people who normally wouldn't get the chance to see a Broadway show in to see Hamilton.
Yeah.
The extent to which that was actually successful is probably debatable, but
Yeah, it's probably like a handful of tickets.
right. But the effort was there, and the effort was there because Lin-Manuel Miranda is a pretty non-traditional creative figure in Broadway, just like Trey Parker and Matt Stone are. So I think that even if just you and I, in our limited perspective, can only see kind of one direct offspring, there is still an effect taking place. I think what's more interesting to me, and probably the most instructive element of this episode, is, well, okay, if more people aren't seeing Broadway now than did 20 years ago, I think it's still really, really significant that it feels like more people see it because of the way these shows can penetrate popular culture now. Like, the Book of Mormon has a huge reach. Hamilton is an even bigger reach. And those things feel like moments in a way they never had before because of all these other things that we've talked about in the other episodes. Just things can reach more people now because of the internet, because of social media, and it feels like these things are bigger than probably they actually are. And that kind of conflict, I don't know, it's just funny because you can't measure it. You can't measure something's like real reach.
Exactly. That's the thing. I think we as investigators, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. We have
couple
slap that
PIs.
title on us. Sure, yeah, but we're investigating like a topic. We're like how a documentary filmmaker goes to Antarctica to film fucking penguins. We spend our time like investigating pop culture the past 10 years.
Same thing.
I think exactly. No. We're Isaac Newton. Just no fucking whatever his name is who went to the Galapagos Islands. I'm a genius. Fuck you. Have you ever played like Age of Empires or like
hell yeah.
any like real-time strategy game?
Yeah.
Like Sid Meier's. You know how like on the edge of the map there's that gray and you kind of know what's over there, but this is that we found the gray of our knowledge here, which is like I don't quite know what's over there, and I have to get a scout unit and move him over there to figure out. He'll probably get killed, but we've reached that kind of like gray wall where I don't know how to measure this because we just don't have enough experience. And even if we were like fucking like short of being theater critics, I don't think we could ever have enough access to enough plays to really measure out like what the reach is of these two plays.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that exact dynamic, I love the fog of war image. Like
Fog of War. That's Fog of War.
Where the scouts like charge in.
Yeah. We'll definitely get killed by some archer unit, but we'll figure out what's over there.
Like the fact that we felt the urge to place the Book of Mormon alongside My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and the Avengers and Game of Thrones and Get Out and all these other things, like that is in itself that speaks to this whole thing that we're debating and talking about. It felt that big and felt that important. I think what we're realizing in this conversation is it probably wasn't, but that dissonance still matters.
Yeah. And we'll never know, so fuck it.
Yeah. And then, great show. If it's in your town in the next 2 decades, you should go see it.
Go see it. All right, cool.
Hey, that was easy.